Good evening, fellow Toastmasters and guests. How many of you like to invest your money from your job? Save your money, maybe put it in the stock market or 401k, real estate, perhaps a restaurant. Well, tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about investing and also about the markets in general. We've all seen, I would imagine most people, for a 401k put their money in the market, in the stock market. Over the past 4 or 5 years or so, the stock market has been going up. The economy seems to have gotten better. People are working more, and in general, things seem pretty good. But the beginning of this year, I'm sure most of you probably know, even if you read the headlines, that the stock market didn't start the year that well, especially the first month or so. It went down, I believe, 10 or 12%. Did you notice that, Jim?
Yeah.
And not only the stock market, but also a lot of the economic data that's come in recently really hasn't been that good. For the last quarter of 2015, the first estimate of the GDP growth, which is a pretty common figure they use, it actually only grew 0.7%, when generally they shoot for hopefully 2 or 3% growth. If it's below zero 2 quarters in a row, it could actually be a recession. So tonight I'm going to talk about some other maybe investment opportunities, one of which is gold. Now, some of you know, and don't smirk when I say gold, especially this young man. He's like, who buys gold? But I've actually given a number of speeches on gold investing, and I first bought gold in the year, I believe, the early 2000s, when it was at $400. I had invested money in the stock market before that. I made a lot of money, then I lost it when the bubble crashed. And I thought I had a good feeling for the markets. I had about $30,000 in cash saved up. I went and bought gold bars, 20 or 30 1-ounce gold bars, like a crazy person, going to this coin shop and put it in my bank account. I talked to my friends and went, you should buy gold. They thought I was nuts. Who would do this? But actually, from the early 2000s, gold went to about $1,000 or $1,200 an ounce, and I sold it all by 2010. I had sold it all. Now, come back to today, 2016, and gold has been in a bear market for 5 years. For the last 5 years, as the stock market and real estate have done well, gold has done very poorly because people are making money in the stock market, real estate, what have you, among other reasons. But the beginning of this year, while stocks and a lot of the economic data has been poorer, gold has actually started to rise again. Gold, I think, is up 5 or 7%, and a lot of gold stocks are up 30%. So, in my opinion, this could be the end of the gold bear market that we've had for 5 years. A bear market is when, whether it's stocks or any investment, if it's commodities, a bear market can correct 50%, stocks maybe 20 or 30%. And in my opinion, it could be an investment opportunity. I'm not going to tell you in my speech what to buy or what not to buy. I'm just going to try and lay out the facts, because investing is a very personal decision. So aside from gold and stocks and all this sort of thing, economic data, at the same time, the economy since the 2008 financial crash, remember we were joking before that Extreme Toastmasters was crowded because no one had a job, and now hardly anyone's here because we're all working for Uber or something. But for the last 5 or 6 years, interest rates were at zero. It kind of pumped money into the economy because you can borrow money cheaply and start businesses. But the Federal Reserve finally raised rates a quarter of a point at the end of last year. And I had also done a speech on interest rates and how it might be difficult to raise interest rates because there's so much debt is built up in the system. I talked about a lot of unprofitable businesses we see. Workout clubs, you see them, Roberta? On every street, there's 2 or 3 workout clubs. So maybe that 0% interest policy wasn't as efficient as it could be. And now that the Fed has started to raise rates because they don't want to create more bubbles, they want to get back to normal, you're seeing maybe the consequences of the data is starting to weaken and the stock market is coming down. At the same time, keep in mind that everything goes in cycles, business cycle, what have you. Now, as far as gold, I don't want you just listening to me. So there's a few other experts that are starting to say that it might be possibly a good investment. And keep in mind, gold, it should really be more as an insurance policy. Even if you decided to buy gold, I wouldn't want you to put all your money, you should never put all your money in one basket like I do. But it should be really used as a small insurance policy. But some experts like Ray Dalio, now I'm sure probably no one's heard of him, but he runs the top hedge fund in the US as far as performance and the amount of money that it controls. And he has said gold possibly should be part of your portfolio, and especially beginning this year when stocks went down. And at the same time, with the interest rate policy, I don't want to get too technical, but the Fed actually this year wanted to raise rates 4 more times. But now it looks like they won't be able to raise rates at all, because as you raise rates, the economy slows. And this Ray Dalio, he also looks at cycles, and he thinks we're in the end of a 50-year debt cycle. And what he says needs to happen is, instead of raising rates, what the Fed and another man, Peter Schiff, who is a little bit more far to the right, but Mr. Schiff predicted the real estate crash and financial meltdown of 2008, and Schiff has predicted, going back to a year or two, that the U.S. would actually, instead of raising rates, do more quantitative easing. And now Mr. Dalio thinks the same thing, and other people are starting to say that it will be impossible, actually, for the Fed to raise rates, and they will have to print more money. Now, if we think about the Federal Reserve, and I know you're thinking about a lot of different things, but it's really pretty simple. You have to keep in mind here, when we were kids, Ken, Tim, maybe Pat, and the economy was slow, generally, what do you remember happening? The president or Congress would have maybe some type of jobs program, or we're going to invest money in infrastructure, or maybe a tax cut, things like this. Do we all remember this? Whereas now what happens, you don't hear a lot about that. You hear the Federal Reserve saying, we're going to cut rates, or we're going to have quantitative easing. So it's all about printing money instead of making structural differences. And what I said before about the Federal Reserve is, they didn't predict the financial crash of 2008, because many of these people, they're professors working from an ivory tower, and they don't really have a lot of experience. Most of them, maybe this was the only job they ever got. So they don't have a lot of experience like some of these financial traders. We all know from public speaking, it's one thing to read about speaking in a book, but to give a speech is another thing. So for all these reasons, and also we have some visitors from Asia, from China, at the same time of all this financial stuff, a lot of the rest of the world is still buying gold. I'm sure this man has a bunch of bars in a safe box. Right?
I don't know.
So at the same time, with the finance going on here, you still have the rest of the developing world accumulating gold. So just to wrap it up, in my opinion, it could be an investment opportunity. If you want to ask questions later on how to purchase gold, whether stocks or bars, you can give me a question. I'll be more than happy to answer it. But it could just be the investment opportunity of the decade. Thank you.